What if everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and your own worth is a lie? What if the reason you feel lost, rejected, or stuck isn't because you're not good enough, but because you've been playing by the wrong rules? The truth is raw. It's uncomfortable. But once you hear it, you'll never see life the same way again. This book isn't here to comfort you. It's here to wake you up. And once you do, you'll never go back to who you were before. Keep listening, if you're ready for the truth. The last rejection email hit harder than the rest. Logan sat at his kitchen table, staring at the cold coffee he had poured hours ago. The subject line, "We regret to inform you," felt like a slap across the face. Another opportunity lost. Another company deciding he wasn't the right fit. His phone buzzed, a message from his mom. "Mom, any good news, sweetheart? Dad and I are praying for you." He sighed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. He couldn't bring himself to reply. What was he supposed to say? "Hey, Mom, turns out your son is a failure. Cheers." The weight of expectation pressed against his chest. He had done everything right, graduated from a good university, followed the so-called success formula, networked, polished his resume until it shined. Yet, here he was, drowning in rejection emails, watching his savings shrink while friends posted pictures of promotions, weddings, and European vacations. Was something wrong with him? Logan picked up his laptop and aimlessly scrolled through LinkedIn. People he once studied with were now thought leaders, or Forbes 30 under 30. He closed the screen in frustration. What was he missing? The air in his tiny apartment felt suffocating, thick with the smell of unwashed dishes and the stale remnants of takeout meals. He needed fresh air. Grabbing his hoodie, Logan stepped outside, wandering aimlessly down the dimly lit streets of Brooklyn. The city, as always, was alive. Couples laughing at sidewalk cafes, street musicians playing their hearts out, taxis honking impatiently. He used to love this energy, but tonight it only reminded him of how stuck he felt. Then something caught his eye. A sidewalk book vendor, one of those pop-up stalls crammed with everything from classic literature to self-help nonsense. Logan rarely read outside of work-related articles, but something about the display made him pause. His gaze landed on a book with an aggressive, almost confrontational title, The Rudest Book Ever by Shwetabh Gangwar. He picked it up, flipping through the pages. The first line hit him like a punch. "Hey, buddy, how are you doing? Aren't you glad that you bought this book?" It wasn't the typical self-help fluff. It was raw, honest. Almost like the author was talking directly to him, cutting through the noise of his mind. "Good book," the vendor said, eyeing Logan. "Not your usual believe-in-yourself crap. This one tells it like it is." Logan hesitated. He didn't believe in self-help books. They always felt like sugar-coated nonsense. But tonight, standing on that cold sidewalk, something made him pull out his wallet. "Sold," he muttered. He had no idea that this book was about to change his life. Logan tossed his hoodie onto the couch and collapsed into his chair. The book felt heavier in his hands than it should have, like it carried something more than just words. He flipped to the first chapter. "The world doesn't give a flying fuck about you." He blinked. Well, that was blunt. His instinct was to roll his eyes and toss the book aside, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the fact that he had spent weeks drowning in self-pity, expecting some miracle to come and save him. Maybe it was because deep down, he knew the world truly didn't care. And maybe that was the problem. He kept reading. "You were raised to believe you are special, that if you do all the right things, life will reward you. But the truth is, nobody is coming to save you. If you want something, you have to go get it. No one owes you shit." Logan exhaled sharply. It felt personal, like the author had been watching his life unfold and was calling him out on his bullshit. He thought about all those times he had told himself, "I deserve better." The job rejections, the disappointments, the frustration. He had been treating them like personal attacks from the universe, but the universe wasn't plotting against him. It simply didn't care. Something inside him shifted. He read on. The next chapter hit even harder. Rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It's just information. People reject you for their own reasons, not because you are fundamentally broken. Logan clenched his jaw. He had been treating rejection as proof of his inadequacy, like every no was a confirmation that he wasn't good enough. But what if rejection wasn't about him at all? What if he had been looking at it wrong this whole time? His mind flashed back to a memory, his first college rejection. He had spent weeks crafting the perfect application essay, believing that if he wrote well enough, they had to accept him. When the rejection letter arrived, he was devastated. He had taken it as a personal failure, proof that he wasn't smart enough. But maybe it had nothing to do with him. Maybe they had already filled their quota. Maybe his application had been lost in a sea of equally good ones. Maybe rejection wasn't personal. For the first time in a long time, Logan felt something other than frustration. Relief. Not the kind that comes from getting what you want, but the kind that comes from realizing you've been holding on to the wrong beliefs. He looked around his apartment. It was cluttered, just like his mind had been. Stacks of unopened mail, unfinished projects, job applications he had stopped following up on. Maybe it was time to change things. He closed the book. Tomorrow would be different. Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying this story so far, consider hitting that subscribe button. Your support truly means the world to us. All right, let's continue. The next morning, Logan woke up before his alarm. That alone was a small miracle. For weeks, he had been hitting snooze, lying in bed dreading another pointless day. But today felt different. Not revolutionary, not some grand awakening. But there was a spark. A tiny shift in his brain that whispered, what if things don't have to stay this way? He grabbed the Rudest book ever from his nightstand and flipped back to the chapter that had hit him hardest. People are weird. Stop trying to make sense of their choices. He thought about all the job interviews where he had been ghosted, the hiring managers who had smiled and nodded, then never responded. He had obsessed over what he did wrong, replaying conversations, convincing himself that he wasn't good enough. But what if it wasn't about him? What if they just hired someone else because they knew a guy? What if they picked the person with the same alma mater as the CEO? What if they just weren't looking for someone like him? Did that mean he was worthless? No, it just meant they made a choice. For the first time, Logan realized how much energy he had wasted overanalyzing situations that didn't deserve his attention. He closed the book and exhaled. Enough of this shit. He got out of bed, grabbed a trash bag, and started cleaning his apartment. The clutter mirrored his mind. Old rejection letters, reminders of failures, unopened mail that screamed, "You're behind on life." Every piece of junk he threw away felt like shedding dead weight. Halfway through, his phone buzzed. A text from his best friend, Nate. Nate, yo, haven't seen you in forever. Want to grab a drink tonight? Logan hesitated. Lately, he had avoided socializing, too ashamed to admit how lost he felt. But now, he didn't have all the answers, but he was making changes. Logan, yeah, man, let's do it. That evening, as he sat across from Nate at their usual bar, Logan noticed something. Nate was thriving. He had just gotten a promotion, had a serious girlfriend, and seemed to have life figured out. Old Logan would have felt inadequate sitting there, but something Gangwar wrote echoed in his head. Admire, never follow. Instead of envying Nate, Logan asked, how did he get there? Nate, Logan said, setting down his drink, you ever feel like you were completely failing at life? Nate laughed. Dude, all the time. Logan raised an eyebrow. You? Come on, man, you're killing it. Nate shook his head. Nah, I just look like I have it together. Last year, I was barely making rent. Had no clue what I was doing. Thought I was screwing up every decision." Logan stared. What changed? Nate shrugged. "I stopped waiting for life to make sense. I just started doing shit." Logan nodded. Maybe he was finally starting to get it. Logan walked home from the bar with a different kind of buzz, not from the beer, but from the conversation with Nate. "I stopped waiting for life to make sense. I just started doing shit." That line played over and over in his head. He had been stuck in analysis paralysis for months, waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect answer, the perfect motivation to strike. But what if he had it all backward? What if clarity came after action, not before? That night, Logan made a decision. He pulled out his laptop, opened his resume, and started applying for jobs again. But this time, something was different. Instead of obsessing over whether he was good enough for each position, he treated it like a numbers game. He wasn't going to take rejection personally anymore. He was just going to play the odds. Step 1. Apply relentlessly. He sent out 20 applications. Then, he did something else he had been putting off for weeks. He reached out to an old colleague. "Logan. Hey man, hope you're doing well. I'm looking for new opportunities. Let me know if your company is hiring." No overthinking, no waiting for the perfect message, just action. By the time he closed his laptop, something weird happened. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a failure. Not because he had a job yet, not because his problems were magically solved, but because he was moving. The next morning, Logan woke up to a text. Colleague. "Hey, actually, yeah, we're hiring. Send me your resume. I'll put in a word for you." Logan sat up in bed, stunned. Had it really been that simple? He had spent months spiraling, feeling sorry for himself, convinced he was stuck, when all he had to do was ask. He shook his head and laughed. The book had warned him about this. Most people are stuck because they're scared to do the simplest shit. They'd rather overthink and suffer than risk looking stupid. Well, screw that. He was done playing that game. He grabbed his laptop, fired off the email, and then, because he wasn't about to slow down now, he kept applying to even more jobs. Something had shifted inside him. He wasn't desperate anymore. He wasn't waiting for someone to validate him. He was just doing the work. Later that week, he got his first interview, then a second. By the time the weekend rolled around, he had 3 companies interested in him. All from the same strategy: stop whining, start doing. For the first time in his life, Logan understood something. The world doesn't owe you shit, but if you're willing to put in the work, you can take what's yours. And he was ready to take it. Logan stood outside the office building, adjusting his tie. His first in-person interview in months. It felt different this time. The old Logan would have walked in nervous, desperate to impress, trying too hard to be likable. But now, he wasn't here to beg for a job. He was here to see if this company deserved him. He walked inside with his shoulders squared. The receptionist directed him to a conference room where he met Aaron, the hiring manager, a guy in his mid-40s with the tired look of someone who had seen too many underprepared candidates. Aaron leaned back in his chair. "So, Logan, tell me about yourself." Logan smiled. He had rehearsed this answer 100 times before, always trying to say what he thought they wanted to hear. But this time, he just told the truth. "I'm someone who's good at figuring things out." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "Interesting answer. What do you mean?" Logan leaned forward. "A few months ago, I thought rejection was proof that I wasn't good enough. But I realized rejection is just data. If I fail at something, it means I'm missing a skill or approach, so I adjust. I don't take it personally anymore." Aaron smirked. "Not gonna lie, that's refreshing to hear. Most candidates come in here either overconfident or terrified." Logan shrugged. "I used to be one of them." The rest of the interview flowed naturally. Logan didn't try to impress. He just showed up as himself. He asked questions about the company, their values, their challenges. He made it clear that he was evaluating them too. By the time he shook Aaron's hand and walked out, he knew he had done well. But something else had changed too. For the first time, he wasn't attached to the outcome. If he got the job, great. If not, he'd keep going. Because now he understood something most people didn't. The game wasn't about getting this job. It was about becoming the kind of person who could land any job. 3 days later, his phone rang. "Logan, it's Aaron. I won't waste your time. We'd love to have you on board." Logan grinned. "I appreciate that. What's the offer?" He never would have said that before. The old Logan would have just blurted out, "Yes, I'll take it." But now, he knew his worth. Aaron gave him the salary figure. It was good, but Logan had done his research. He knew the market rate. "I appreciate the offer," Logan said, "but based on my skills and the role's responsibilities, I was expecting something closer to this." Aaron chuckled. "You drive a hard bargain, Logan. All right, let me see what I can do." An hour later, Aaron called back. "You got it." Logan exhaled. He had negotiated. He had won. Not just the job, but his self-respect. Logan sat in his apartment, staring at the email. Subject, final offer, welcome to the team. He had done it. After months of rejection, self-doubt, and feeling like a failure, he had landed a great job on his own terms. But as he sat there, he realized something. This win wasn't just about the job. It was about who he had become in the process. The Logan from a few months ago would have jumped at any opportunity, desperate for approval, thinking a job would fix him. But this Logan, he had learned that nothing external could ever define him. The book had been right all along. You are not special, but you can make yourself into someone worth admiring. And that's exactly what he had done. Walking into his new office felt surreal. For so long, he had imagined this moment, what it would feel like to finally have a job again, to reclaim his confidence. But the strange thing was, he didn't feel an overwhelming high like he expected. Because now he understood. A job was just a job. It wasn't his identity. It wasn't his worth. It was simply another step in his journey. His manager introduced him to the team, and Logan could already see the different personalities in the room. Some eager, some indifferent, some looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The old Logan would have spent weeks trying to fit in, trying to impress everyone, trying to make people like him. Not this time. Now, he understood something crucial. Admire, never follow. He wasn't here to chase approval. He was here to do his job, grow, and keep building himself. That night, Logan met up with Nate again. They grabbed a couple of beers, and Nate grinned as he raised his bottle. To the new Logan, he said, "Dude, I don't know what changed in you, but it's working." Logan smirked. "I stopped giving a shit." Nate laughed. "Seriously, man, a few months ago you were stuck in your head. Now you're out here negotiating salaries like a boss." Logan shrugged. "I just realized no one's coming to save me. If I want something, I have to take it." Nate nodded. "That's the game, man." Logan took a sip of his beer and thought back to all those months he had wasted feeling lost. He wasn't bitter about it, though, because those months had taught him. Every rejection, every moment of self-doubt, every time he had felt not good enough, they had all led him here. And now, he was just getting started. 2 weeks into his new job, Logan sat at his desk, staring at a never-ending list of tasks. The excitement had worn off. The honeymoon phase of landing the job had been great. New opportunities, fresh starts, feeling like a winner. But now, it was just work. Emails, deadlines, meetings that could have been emails. And for a second, doubt crept in. Is this it? He had spent months clawing his way out of unemployment, thinking that once he got here, everything would feel different. But now that he had arrived, he realized the uncomfortable truth. No job, no thing, would ever give him lasting happiness. He flipped open the rudest book ever to a passage he had highlighted. Screw happiness, choose satisfaction. Logan exhaled. It was never about finding happiness. It was about creating satisfaction through growth, through effort, through becoming better. That's what this job was. Not a destination, but a platform. Not an identity, but a tool. He straightened up in his chair and got back to work, not because he loved it, but because he knew this was just one step of many. And that was enough. A month in, Logan started noticing something strange. Some of his co-workers, people who had been there years, were still stuck in the same position, complaining about the same problems, repeating the same frustrations. They hated the job, but they stayed. Logan couldn't understand it. One afternoon, he grabbed coffee with Mark, a senior analyst who had been at the company for 6 years. "Dude," Logan said, stirring his coffee, "if you hate it here so much, why don't you leave?" Mark sighed. "It's complicated." "Is it?" Logan challenged. "Or have you just convinced yourself it is?" Mark looked at him, a little annoyed. "Easy for you to say, you just got here." Logan smirked. "Exactly. Which is why I haven't been here long enough to accept this as normal." Mark shook his head, but Logan could see the thought landed. Later that night, as Logan flipped through the book again, he found another highlighted line. Most people don't leave bad situations because they'd rather deal with familiar suffering than risk the unknown. It clicked. Mark wasn't stuck because of the job. He was stuck because of himself. Logan made a silent promise to himself right then. He would never let himself get comfortable with misery. The moment he stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped pushing himself, he would move. Because unlike Mark, Logan wasn't scared of the unknown anymore. Logan couldn't stop thinking about his conversation with Mark. It wasn't just him. Almost everyone in the office was stuck. Stuck in a cycle of hating their job but never doing anything about it. Complaining about their boss, their workload, their pay, yet showing up every day like prisoners serving a life sentence. For the first time, Logan saw what the rudest book ever had been trying to teach him all along. Most people weren't trapped by their circumstances. They were trapped by their own mindset. Logan didn't want to become one of them. He opened a blank document on his laptop and typed, "Exit plan." If he was going to stay in this job, it would be temporary. He needed a strategy, something that would keep him moving forward, not stuck like the others. Step 1. Master a high-value skill. Step 2. Build a network outside of this job. Step 3. Keep looking for better opportunities. Always. He refused to wake up in 5 years, sitting in the same chair, making the same complaints, trapped by the same fears. If this job stopped serving him, he would walk away. And he would do it on his own terms. One night, Logan was scrolling through LinkedIn when he saw a post from an old college classmate. "Finally took the leap and quit my 9 to 5. Scary but exciting. On to bigger things." Logan stared at the words. For months, he had been afraid of not having a job. Now, he realized something equally terrifying. Most people were afraid of leaving one. They would rather stay in a miserable, predictable situation than step into uncertainty. But what if uncertainty wasn't something to fear? What if it was something to embrace? Logan flipped open the rudest book ever to one of his favorite passages. "Comfort is a slow, deadly poison. It feels good in the moment, but it kills your ambition, your courage, and your willingness to take risks." He was starting to see it everywhere. People settling, people waiting. Waiting for the right moment to quit. Waiting for the perfect opportunity to come. Waiting until they felt ready. But no one ever felt ready. The people who moved forward were the ones who acted anyway. Logan made a decision right then. He wasn't going to be one of those people who spent years waiting for the right time to level up. If he ever started feeling too comfortable, if his ambition ever started fading, he would force himself into motion. Because the biggest risk wasn't failing, it was staying the same. A few months into the job, Logan saw the signs. The initial challenge had faded. The learning curve had flattened. He was getting comfortable, and he hated it. He saw it happening in real time, the slow creep of complacency, the way his coworkers had resigned themselves to monotony, the way people settled for just enough because it was safe. But Logan had promised himself, the moment he stopped growing, he would leave. And now, that moment had arrived. Instead of just quitting, Logan followed what he had learned from the Rudest book ever. Don't make emotional decisions, make strategic ones. So he started looking, quietly. He reached out to recruiters. He updated his resume. He started building relationships outside of his job, treating every conversation as an opportunity. And soon offers started coming in. Better pay, better opportunities, more growth. One morning, Logan walked into his boss's office with his resignation letter. His manager, surprised, leaned back in his chair. Did something happen? Logan shook his head. Nope. Just time for the next step. The man frowned. You're doing well here, Logan. We were even considering you for a senior position soon. The old Logan would have hesitated. He would have seen this as validation, as a reason to stay. But now? Now he knew his value wasn't tied to a title or company. He smiled. I appreciate that, but I have bigger plans. And with that, he walked out, without fear, without regret. Because he finally understood, leaving wasn't failure. It was growth. On his last day, coworkers shook his hand, congratulated him, some even saying, I wish I had the guts to do what you're doing. That stuck with him. Not because it made him feel brave, but because it made him realize how many people felt trapped, not by their jobs, but by their own fear. He had been there once. Terrified of rejection, afraid of the unknown, stuck in his own self-doubt. But now he was free. Not because he had the perfect job, not because he had figured it all out, but because he had learned how to walk away from anything that no longer served him. That was real power. As he stepped out of the office for the last time, the words from the book echoed in his mind. The world doesn't owe you anything, but if you're willing to take risks, you can carve out whatever life you want. And Logan? He was just getting started. Logan woke up the next morning feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Uncertainty. No guaranteed paycheck, no set routine, no safety net. And yet, he wasn't scared. He had spent years believing that security came from a job. That stability meant following the normal path, climbing the corporate ladder, impressing the right people, waiting for promotions like treats from a trainer. But now he understood the truth. The real power is in not needing anyone's approval to build your own path. For the first time, he had complete control over his future. And that realization was exhilarating. Instead of rushing to apply for another job, Logan took a different approach. He sat down and wrote a list. What do I actually want to do? What skills can I leverage right now? What gaps do I need to fill? Instead of just jumping into another role, he started treating his career like a business. He set up meetings with people in his industry, not asking for jobs, just learning, building relationships, figuring out where the real opportunities were. Within weeks, something crazy happened. He got 3 offers. 2 were traditional jobs. The third, a startup offering him a consulting role, higher pay, flexible hours, complete control. Logan smirked. A few months ago, he would have blindly taken the first safe option. Now, He was thinking long term. He took the consulting role, not because it was the safest choice, but because it gave him the most leverage. One night, Logan met up with Nate again. "You are glowing, man," Nate said, taking a sip of his beer. "It's weird." Logan laughed. "Weird how?" "You don't seem worried," Nate said. "Most people would have panicked after quitting their job, but you seem calmer now than when you were employed." Logan leaned back. "Because I stopped making decisions based on fear," he said. "For years I thought security came from a paycheck. But now I get it. Real security comes from knowing you can rebuild any time you want." Nate stared at him, then grinned. "Damn," he said. "You sound like a guy who finally figured out his own worth." Logan smirked. "Took me long enough." The truth was, he hadn't just gotten a better job. He had built a mindset that would serve him for life. Because no matter what happened, no matter how many times he failed, got rejected, or had to start over, he would never again be the guy waiting for permission. He was the guy who made things happen. And that made all the difference. A year later, Logan sat in the same cafe where he had once scrolled through job rejections, drowning in self-doubt. Only this time he wasn't stuck. His consulting work had taken off. He had built a network, learned how to negotiate, and positioned himself as someone people wanted to work with. He was making more money than he ever had at a corporate job, but more importantly, he was in control. No office politics, no waiting for a promotion, no playing by anyone else's rules. He had built his own opportunities. And the best part? He wasn't special. That was the biggest lesson of all. No one is born special, but anyone can become someone worth admiring if they're willing to do the work. Logan had stopped waiting for permission, stopped looking for validation, stopped making excuses. And now, he was free. As he sipped his coffee, he thought about the guy he used to be, the version of himself who felt lost, stuck, and powerless. If he could say one thing to that Logan, it would be this: no one is coming to save you, and that's the best news ever, because it means you don't have to wait on anyone to change your life. He had learned the hard way that rejection wasn't personal, that playing it safe was an illusion, that security wasn't about a job, it was about trusting yourself to adapt no matter what happened. He looked down at his phone and saw a notification. "Nate. Dude, I think I'm ready to make a move. Can we talk?" Logan smiled. Funny how things came full circle. This time, he would be the one helping someone else take the leap. Because once you learn how to bet on yourself, you never go back. And Logan, he was never going back. Logan's journey wasn't about luck. It wasn't about waiting for the right moment. It was about choice. The choice to stop making excuses. The choice to take action even when it was uncomfortable. The choice to stop chasing approval and start building his own path. And that's a choice you have too. Life isn't going to hand you anything. The world doesn't owe you success, happiness, or validation. But here's the good news: you don't need it. Everything you want is on the other side of action. So stop waiting, stop hesitating. Go make it happen. Because no one is coming to save you. And that's exactly why you can save yourself.